Today, we're diving into something pretty amazing. We're looking at how an ancient healing practice is getting a high-tech upgrade to help children with autism spectrum disorder. We're going to explore a new study that uses, believe it or not, focused light to help tackle one of their biggest challenges: communication.
So, here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll get a handle on the communication barrier in ASD. Then, we'll look at a really important clinical trial that used light to try and make a difference. We're going to break down the science of how stimulating points on the body can actually affect the brain, ask why they used a laser instead of needles, and then, zoom out to see what it all means.
All right, so to really get why this study is such a big deal, we have to start with the core challenge it's trying to solve. Autism Spectrum Disorder, or ASD, is a really complex condition. And for so many families, one of the toughest parts is navigating the world of social interaction and communication. This definition really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? The key words here are enduring impairments. These aren't just temporary difficulties. For a lot of kids with ASD, learning to speak and interact with others is a massive hurdle, and it touches every single part of their lives and how they connect with the world.
So, with a challenge this big, researchers are constantly on the lookout for new tools, new approaches, and that brings us to what might just be a breakthrough. A recent, really well-designed clinical trial decided to ask a simple question: could laser acupuncture, a totally non-invasive therapy, have a real, measurable impact on speech for kids with ASD?
Now, this wasn't just a few feel-good stories. The researchers used what's called a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled design. I know that's a mouthful, but it's basically the gold standard for medical research. It means nobody, not the kids, not the parents, not even the people doing the evaluations, knew who was getting the real laser treatment and who was getting a fake or placebo treatment. And that's absolutely crucial because it weeds out any bias and shows you if the therapy itself is what's working.
Okay, so what did this super rigorous study actually find? Well, the results were pretty stunning. Just look at this chart. They used a standardized test to measure speech, and the difference was huge. The blue bars represent the kids who got the real laser therapy. For comprehension, their scores shot up by an average of 2.86, totally blowing past the placebo group's 0.95. And for expression, you see the same story. The treatment group improved by 1.73, more than double the placebo. These are not small changes. They're statistically significant leaps forward.
But let's put an even finer point on that. If we just look at speech expression, the ability to form words and communicate outwards, the study found that the real laser treatment was over 50 times more effective at improving scores than the placebo. 50 times! That's just, wow. That kind of number really makes you sit up and pay attention.
But data and charts are one thing. What does this actually look like in a kid's daily life? This is where it gets really powerful. Parents started noticing real tangible changes. Their kids were calmer. They started babbling more, making new sounds, even trying out words like mama and papa. And maybe most importantly, they saw improvements in social interactions, like making more eye contact. I mean, these are the kinds of breakthroughs that change everything for a family.
Okay, so the results are impressive, for sure. But this all raises a really big question, right? How on earth is this possible? How can shining a beam of light on someone's skin influence something as complicated as speech and brain function? Well, let's dig into the science.
So one of the key mechanisms seems to be the activation of a protein called BDNF. The easiest way to think about BDNF is like fertilizer for your brain. Seriously, it's this crucial protein that helps your brain cells grow, survive, and build new connections. And it turns out, stimulating certain acupoints can actually ramp up the production of this brain fertilizer, which might help repair and build the neural pathways that are so important for communication. And it's not just about brain growth, it's also about brain chemistry. The stimulation from the laser can act like a tiny switchboard, helping to regulate key brain chemicals, neurotransmitters like dopamine and acetylcholine, that play a big role in memory and mood. Research also shows that hitting specific points can light up parts of the brain that are directly connected to motor skills and hearing, both pretty essential for speaking. And then there's this really cool 1-2 punch for the brain's overall health. First, the therapy seems to calm down inflammation in the brain, which can get in the way of healthy function. Second, at the same time, it boosts nitric oxide, which helps open up blood vessels and improve circulation. So you're creating this healthier, less inflamed, better-fed environment for all those brain cells to do their job. It's pretty amazing.
And I want to be clear, this wasn't a random process. The researchers were incredibly precise.
They targeted a very specific cocktail of acupoints. Now, the names might look a bit technical, but each one was chosen for a reason, like those points on the hand and foot that we know activate the motor and auditory parts of the brain, or even a specialized area on the scalp that's directly linked to speech. It's a very strategic, targeted approach.
Okay, so when you hear acupuncture, your mind probably jumps straight to needles, right? So why did this incredible study use a laser? Well, it turns out there are some pretty big advantages, especially when you're working with kids.
It's a really important question, because for any therapy to actually work for a child, it has to be practical. It has to be something they can tolerate. So why go with light instead of the traditional tool?
Well, the answer really comes down to the patient's experience. Let's be honest, traditional needle acupuncture is invasive. It can hurt, and that can be a massive barrier for any kid, but especially for a child who might have sensory sensitivities. The laser, on the other hand, is a total game changer. It's completely non-invasive, it's painless, and there's zero risk of infection. It's just a much, much better option for kids.
And the safety record here is just remarkable. Get this, in that big clinical trial we've been talking about, not one single child dropped out because of a bad experience. There were no side effects reported, none. That tells you everything you need to know about how safe and easy this therapy is and why it's becoming a go-to choice for pediatric patients.
Okay, so we've looked at the trial, we've looked at the science behind it. Let's step back for a second. What's the real takeaway here? What does this all mean when we look at the bigger picture?
Here's the bottom line. The evidence is showing that laser acupuncture isn't some miracle cure, but it is an incredibly promising, safe, and easy-to-administer complementary therapy. It's one more powerful tool in the toolbox that can be used right alongside things like behavioral and occupational therapy, all working together to help improve speech and social interaction for these kids.
And that just leaves us with this one last fascinating thought. For so long, we've been searching for keys to unlock the mysteries of the brain, and this new research suggests that one of those keys might not be a complicated new drug or an invasive surgery, but something as simple and fundamental as a focused beam of light. And that, right there, offers a whole new kind of hope. Thanks for joining me.